Hello, friends. Thank you for joining us on today's webinar, How to Raise 400% More with Crowdfunding. Crowdfunding and peer-to-peer fundraising is a powerful tool that allows you to mobilize your supporters to raise money for your causes from their friends, colleagues, and relatives. Today, our experts will share practical tips for recruiting, cultivating, and recognizing volunteer fundraisers that can drive major growth for your organization. We hope you enjoyed today's presentation, and for your reference, we'll send a recording and slides out to all registrants via email. We also want to encourage participation in today's webinar, so please submit your questions through the questions menu in your control panel throughout our presentation. At the end, we'll be having some time for Q&A with our panelists. So now, without further ado, let me introduce today's panel of experts. Salvador Brigman founded the popular blog CrowdCrux, which has been cited by the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, Forbes, CNN, and many more. Last year, he helped over 700,000 individuals raise money from the crowd through his blog, podcast, YouTube channel, forum, online courses, and books. Also, speaking of books, Sal has written a book, Nonprofit Crowdfunding Explained, which reveals a step-by-step plan for executing an online crowdfunding campaign. You may have seen we've been promoting this book, and 5 lucky registrants to today's webinar will receive a free copy of this book. So stay tuned until the end of the event for details. We'll also be hearing from Katie Keening, who is part of the digital marketing services team here at mobilize. Katie advises and guides our customers with fundraising and donor engagement strategies that drive impact. She's helped countless nonprofits exceed their fundraising goals based on her expertise of the mobilize platform and heart for digital fundraising. And they put together a great agenda plan for us today here. They're going to cover successful crowdfunding campaign building blocks, the essential volunteer fundraising campaign tools, how to scale your crowdfunding campaign, and a nonprofit crowdfunding success story. Okay, so before we dive into this great crowdfunding insight, let's take a quick poll here. And the question is, have you run a crowdfunding or peer-to-peer fundraising campaign before? And I'm going to go ahead and launch the polling interface here and go and select from the interface there on your screen your response, yes or no. I'll leave this open for another 10 or 15 seconds, so go ahead and make your selection and hit that submit button there at the bottom of that poll window. Excellent. All right, I'm going to close that poll, and I'll share the results with everyone. So, wow, very nicely split there. Looks like we have about 1/3 of the audience saying yes and 2/3 saying no. So at this point, I'm going to pass things over to Sal. All yours, sir.
Thank you. Great introduction. Also, those results, I think we're seeing more and more people be aware of nonprofit crowdfunding, but there's still tons of nonprofits out there that are not using online fundraising, not using peer-to-peer fundraising, they're not even using traditional crowdfunding. And one of the things from my students, from having interacted with so many people, I've just seen that lots of people will end up running these projects, these campaigns, these fundraisers, and they don't do any kind of preparation beforehand, any kind of education. They don't seek out the best practices. So you guys really are the minority here listening on this call, whether you're on your computer, you're on your phone. You definitely are the minority. So we're going to be sharing a ton of great stuff on today's webinar. I want to do the building blocks of the campaign, what actually goes into a campaign that successfully raises money. One that I've seen, people on my podcast raise, people that I've interviewed from my books, etc. These are really the building blocks that you need to hit the key items if you want to successfully raise money for the crowd or from the crowd. That's what we're going to get into in just a second here. And just advancing the slide here. It doesn't seem like it's going here. 1 second. Sorry about that, guys. There we go. Okay. So the way I like to think of a crowdfunding campaign, I like to think of it sort of as a rocket taking off. Taking off, entering and leaving Earth's atmosphere and going into space. And the most important part of a takeoff is the actual foundation, the launch pad that actually sets that rocket up for having a successful exit, having a successful journey into outer space. So there are a few different things that go into your actual launch pad when it comes to crowdfunding. And you might have done other different types of fundraisers out there. Like you might have annual givings, or you might have ongoing fundraising and donation for your nonprofit. But crowdfunding is actually really different from anything else out there. So one of the big differences between crowdfunding and other types of fundraisers is the fact that you have a fundraising goal. So you have a goal that you're aiming to hit. You're raising money for something specific, for an event, for a cause. And rather than just arbitrarily raising money every once in a while, you're trying to hit this goal. And that's really special because it actually allows people to sort of rally around that, whether you have team members or yourself or other people that are backing and supporting and donating to that project. They're allowed to see this fundraising meter slowly start to increase and slowly start to get closer and closer towards that goal. And it's really exciting. It creates a sense of momentum and also a sense of belonging. So when you're thinking about crowdfunding, you really have to think about what your fundraising goal is going to be and what that is going to enable you to do. What are these funds going to enable you to do in terms of helping your core demographic, or if you're putting on some kind of an event or something like that. Another really big building block for a crowdfunding campaign is also, it's different than other fundraisers. A lot of times I'll talk with people, I'm at a networking event, talk about crowdfunding, and I always get the question, why is it that you wouldn't just raise money on a continual basis throughout the year? With a crowdfunding campaign, not only do you have a fundraising goal, you also have a set duration during which you're raising money. And that could be 30 days, that could be 60 days, that could be 20 days. We have a set duration during which you're running this online fundraising campaign. And people are always like, why would you do that? Like, don't you want to accept money all year round? And I guess from a logical standpoint, that makes sense. But the reason is that human beings are not logical. We're emotional creatures. We need to feel an emotion before we take action on something. It could be very simple, like, oh, I'm hungry, so I'm going to go to the grocery store. Or if you think back to your college days or post-grad or something like that, if you're preparing to write an essay, you have a 6-page essay or an 8-page essay, the logical thing to do would be to plan every single week and every single day. You're going to get a bite-sized amount of that essay done, but we all know that doesn't happen. What ends up happening is the night before or 2 days before, you really sit down in the library and you hammer out that essay. This sense of urgency, the emotion of urgency, is actually what gets people to take action, and why crowdfunding is so popular and something that's different from any other type of fundraiser out there. So when you have a set duration during which you're raising funds, 20 days, 30 days, those people then towards the end feel that urgency, because they can no longer hem and haw and say like, oh, I don't know if I should support this or not. They have a limited amount of time to actually be able to support and donate to the campaign. So urgency is another really big building block. And then we have more of the different assets that go into the campaign. So things like your pitch video, things like your text, if you're offering rewards, transparency, story, and we'll get more into some of these basics a little bit further on in this class. But I do just want to say one thing here. One of the recurring themes of everything I'm going to be sharing with you is the fact that people have to feel something before they donate money to your cause, before they donate money to your charity or your nonprofit. They have to feel an emotion first. So everything that you're doing with your pitch video, with the text on your project, you're basically aiming to get people to feel some sort of way about your cause, about you, to empathize. You want them to get to feel about the target demo that you're trying to help. So the video is used to, number one, obviously share your story of your nonprofit, but also the stories of the people that you're trying to help, of the people that you have helped in the past. Sharing those stories is a really freaking powerful way to get people to connect with you, to get people to also empathize with those other individuals that you're trying to help. Story is one of those components that just really engages the emotional side of the brain. And of course, you also need to engage that logical side. Like we're not just going to make emotional decisions. Like no one only makes emotional decisions. You also have to underscore with your pitch, your campaign text, why this is something that's important. You can go into statistics and figures and credentials. You can talk about where the funds are going, all of this different stuff. This is really what goes into an effective ask. And I'll sort of break this down a little bit more in a second, but this is what separates every other form of crowdfunding, of fundraising. Because with a campaign, you have all of these elements at play, you have some of these stuff sort of built into the project, like urgency, like a fundraising goal. You then have the video and the campaign text to share your message and story, and then that can be shared around the world via social media and some of the other stuff that we're going to get into. So give me 1 second here. Got to advance the slide. Okay. So going back to the analogy of a rocket ship, you have the launch pad. That's what goes into the campaign. And then you have the actual rocket fuel that's going to make that rocket take off and hopefully go into outer space. You're going to the moon or something like that. When it comes to your rocket fuel, what actually is moving that meter and getting people backing your project, donating to it, and moving that fundraising meter upwards and upwards and upwards, a big core component of that is what I call a crowdfunding street team. So a lot of the great projects in life, the great nonprofits, the great businesses, we tend to see one person at the top, like the CEO or the chairman or the person who's running everything, and we think that they're just kind of responsible for all the great things that happen. But we all know in reality, it takes a team of people to pull off something great, whether that is helping a demographic or putting together a project or something like that. A team of people is what is required, because one person, we can't master every single discipline. We can only do so much by ourselves. So that's why it's pretty much unequivocal that crowdfunding teams raise far more than individuals. If you're an individual trying to run a campaign yourself, I urge you, get one or two other people involved. If possible, get a handful of them. And they can be doing things like helping you recruit donors, sharing your message, liking your posts on Facebook, resharing them. It can help you set up the actual campaign, maybe help you put together the video. By assembling a crowdfunding street team, you are going to be far more successful. And we had about 33% of the people, 30% who said they ran a campaign before. I'm willing to bet you know how much work it was to actually run a crowdfunding campaign. And for the newbies here, this is going to be a fundamental key pillar if you actually do want to be successful with crowdfunding. And in addition, there's also peer-to-peer fundraising. So peer-to-peer fundraising, maybe these team members end up raising money from their social network, and you're more playing the educational role. So there are a few different types of crowdfunding there. And it comes to, I think, coming back to what I was talking about with emotions here, the different stuff we were talking about, like the video, the images, etc. The goal here being to get people to feel something. I think the question, it kind of begs itself, like, okay, so how do you actually get people to feel an emotion towards you? I think it's the most frustrating experience, honestly. I've talked with nonprofit creators, nonprofit owners, and they'll be super passionate about helping a particular demographic. They're helping these people. They're really passionate about it. They're willing to work day and night to do it. But when they start to tell other people about this cause or about these people that they're trying to help, they kind of just get blank stares. They kind of just don't have people that are really that interested. Or they're like, oh yeah, that's great, you're doing that. But then they don't actually give money. I think it's a really frustrating thing that's rarely talked about in the industry. And the issue there is to get kind of more logical about emotions. The issue is that you are feeling an emotion towards a demographic and you're not effectively transmitting that emotion to someone else. You're not getting them to feel the same way that you feel about helping that particular demographic or raising money or whatever, and actually, putting your money where your mouth is, so to speak. So what story does is, number one, when you're sharing stories of the demographics that you're helping or how you were touched or why you're so passionate about helping these people, you're actually allowing people to empathize with you. They put themselves in your shoes. They're able to see why you're making these decisions, why you are so passionate, why you were affected. And it also allows them to empathize with the characters in the story, the other players, the people that you're helping, etc. It really draws people into your world. I don't know about you, but I've always wanted to be a part of stories when I was younger. I always want to play a character, or even we'll dress up when we're little. I think that this is a really amazing opportunity for you almost to put the donors as the heroes of this story, that with their funds, with their money, they're going to be the heroes of the story because they're going to enable great things to happen, your organization to be able to make an impact and do different things. That's really where story comes in. It gets people emotionally invested in what it is you're doing. And then you're not just another random charity out there who's out for their money, who doesn't really care and who isn't willing to communicate with passion and these different emotions. So that's really where the storytelling assets come in. Of course, you also need the core ask. So the core benefit. This is more the logic side. So how actually are you using these funds? What are they going towards? How is this going to enable you to make change or make an impact? Really getting down to the nitty-gritty of those questions, because quite frankly, people are skeptical nowadays. People are skeptical of businesses. People are skeptical of nonprofits. People are skeptical all around. And you really have to break through that barrier first emotionally, but second, you have to back that up with the stats. You have to back that up with the credentials, and of course, how you're tangibly going to help people and how you're going to do that in a transparent way. When you show people very clearly that their money has enabled you to do X, Y, or Z, or caused a change in someone else's life, that gets someone reared up and just ready to go to support you even more. So that's another really core benefit when it comes to your rocket fuel. Now I'm going to sort of just nail down some of the strategies here. And like I said, we will be covering more as we go throughout this class. I just kind of want to give you the framework here. A powerful ignition, when it really comes down to using some of these effective strategies in order to sort of put your head and shoulders above other projects, other campaigns, other nonprofits that are out there. So things like building an email list of people that are interested in your cause and what you're doing. They're interested in supporting and helping this demographic. Using social media to reach new audiences, reaching them to reach strangers and people who connect with what you have to say, and just share. This isn't just you running this small project. A bunch of other people are also interested in this. Leveraging things like PR and the media. I can't tell you, we talk about funding, and that's why we're all here, but there's also so many side benefits to doing a crowdfunding campaign. You get media attention, you get people writing about you, you get people wanting to cover your story because it is so interesting. And as you're raising money, it gets even more interesting. And finally, I think that the last part I want to share here when it comes to the ignition is, we've talked about emotions a ton right now, but I think there is something to be said for a donation actually being a transaction. And hear me out here. When someone gives money to your nonprofit or they give money to your fundraiser, they are expecting something from you. And that is, they're expecting to feel good emotions. They want to feel like a good person. They want to feel like their money is actually helping the world. They want to feel like you care and you're almost taking stewardship of the money that they're giving and entrusting into you. And that ends with you. And we're going to go through some strategies to do that, but you really have to be aware of that and go out of your way to thank people, to say, that means so much to me that you're able to give money. This is what's going to enable us to do. You have to allow people to feel those good emotions, and that's what's actually going to make them want to support you again if you do another fundraiser. So this is a lot of stuff. We could be talking here all day, but I talk about this a lot in my book, Nonprofit Crowdfunding Explained. I go into a lot of the strategies and tactics, and we also have a few people here today who are going to get a free copy of this book. But it's been my passion to talk about this message. These are a lot of principles that are very common in the for-profit world when it comes to marketing, when it comes to selling, when it comes to branding. And I sort of want to bring more of that stuff to nonprofits and enable them to use some of these strategies in order to raise more and more money. And crowdfunding is just one example. We've all seen these fundraisers online that are literally just blowing up. But the problem is that there isn't enough good education when it comes to nonprofit crowdfunding. So first of all, I want to thank Mobile Cause for being one of the leaders of the charge here and sharing all this great information. You're also going to get a bunch in just a second. But also, one of my passions, one of the things I've been trying to do is put out information on my own. So if you're interested, I also have another link for you. If you're listening to this, it's called crowdcrux.com/nonprofit audio. That is crowdcrux.com/nonprofit audio. And the way that Audible works, I know some of you are on a budget. If you sign up for a free trial, you'll also get a free copy of my book. And if you want to afterwards, you can cancel the trial and you'll still be able to keep the copy of my book if you're on a tight budget. But yeah, I just want to thank you so much for showing up on this webinar. I'm going to hand this off to the next presenter. Have a lot of good stuff in store, and also stay around to the end because you'll also hear who gets the free copy of my book.
Certainly. And don't forget to be asking your questions as we go along here. You can type those right into that questions menu. And thank you, Sal, for that information. Very interesting and super helpful. Next up, we'll be hearing from Katie. So, Katie, go ahead. All yours.
Thank you so much. Hi, everybody. It's a pleasure to be with you today. I'm excited to speak with you. As mentioned before, I'm a digital marketing strategist here at mobilize. So my job is basically to help our nonprofits succeed. I provide best practices and strategy and help make sure their campaigns are set up for success. And prior to coming to mobilize, I actually worked in nonprofits myself. So I definitely sympathize with what you guys do on a daily basis, and have worked in digital fundraising for a long time now. I'm so excited to share our best practices and basically how you can really use how these tools and how to develop tools and support for your everyone who's helping you fundraise. Sorry, here, just having a little trouble with the slide. Okay, there we go. So what we'll start here is just kind of the basics to get going. Like really, where do you start? Sal did a great job covering kind of how to start developing your ideas and where to go. So that was so much great information. And now we'll really get down to the nitty gritty. Like, all right, you guys are excited, you're revved up. So where do we start? Where do we really kind of create our crowdfunding campaign? The first step is really, what's the problem that you're wanting to solve, right? You work with such different demographics. You're working with how you're doing a lot of great work every day, and there's probably something specific that you're trying to raise money for. So what is that thing that you're trying to raise that money for? What is the problem that you're trying to help solve? Are you trying to provide more books to children? Are you trying to fill backpacks? Are you trying to provide meals? What is the problem? What is the thing that you need help with? And then create the solution. Is it getting more backpacks? Is it getting more funding? What is kind of the timeline that you need these things? And as you're developing, by creating a problem and solution for a campaign, it allows you to really create a clear foundation to then build up your storytelling, which we'll talk about later. But you can basically then look at specific examples of, excuse me, you can compare kind of like your problem versus your solution. So saying, okay, we have an issue where we have 1,000 children we have lots of children in our community who aren't able to go to school prepared. When the new school year starts in August, we're going to have a lot of children who don't have the proper tools necessary and don't have all the supplies they need. And so what we need is donations, whether it's in-kind donations or monetary donations, and that way we can set our children up on a path to success throughout the year. So that's what we're talking about here. What's your problem? What's your solution? And then from there, we can start to develop those examples that for your storytelling of how does this really help? What's the real impact in your community? And creating that sense of urgency that Sal talked about earlier. So all of this is just leading to basically just help you tell your story, really. So the next step here, and I would argue this is a pretty critical step and one that you'll really want to think about, is recruiting your ambassadors. So you've thought about what your problem is. What is the item that you're wanting to raise money for? You have your solution. You have your storytelling materials. And now what you really need to do is you need to get your story out. So there's a lot of ways that you can do this. We'll talk about those later on. But with crowdfunding, one of the most critical components is really your ambassadors. Ambassadors are, as we define them here, ambassadors are your great volunteers, maybe people who are volunteering on a regular basis, or they're leading a group within your organization, but they're those people that you can count on. Or they're just really great supporters. Maybe they're donating on a regular basis, but you know them by name, you have a good relationship with them, but they're people you feel comfortable sharing, asking for help with your campaign, or just with your organization in general. And what your ambassadors are going to do is they're going to help amplify your impact, right? That's the whole goal of crowdfunding, create kind of a viral effect to get more people to donate, because your ambassadors, they have friends and family too. So they're helping you reach beyond your standard supporter base. And you really want to remember that you might look at your email lists and your social media, maybe even sending text messages, and you're looking at all of these things as, oh, well, we only have 500 emails or 5,000 emails, whatever it might be. But don't forget that your great volunteers and your great supporters, they have friends and family who aren't on your email list. So by recruiting these ambassadors and getting them involved in the crowdfunding campaign, it's then amplifying your efforts and amplifying your email list and your outreach, because they can email their friends and family to bring new people into the fold. So by asking them to share your content, you're reaching out to people who are likely probably going to be passionate about your cause, but you don't have their contact information yet, right? So you're getting new people involved, making new people aware of what you do, and then you're getting them excited about what they're going to be doing to how they can support you. So then your supporters can also tell their story of why they're involved. You know, are they an alumni of your organization? Have they benefited in some capacity? Have their children or friends or some other family member benefited in their capacity from your organization? By having them share their story of why they're personally involved, that's just going to get their friends and family more excited. Because me, as an outsider, I may not necessarily be excited I don't know anything about your organization, but I know that my brother, I love my brother, and I want to support my brother in all he's doing. So if he's telling me why he's passionate about something, why he wants me to donate, I'm happy to make a donation to him. And then that's great for the donor, but then it's also great for you because you're able to grow your database and bring in that extra donation. So ambassadors are a very critical part of the process to make sure you're seeing success. So the next step here is so we've talked about, you've created your material, you had your problem, you had your solution, you have your ambassadors who are sharing with their friends and family, and you're getting these new donors into your network. And the big thing here is making sure to thank them. I love what Sal said earlier in the podcast, and I just want to, or the webinar, I just want to echo it here, that the donation is a transaction, right? People are donating not only to support your cause and to support their friends and family members, but they also do want to feel good as well. That is something they want and expect from you. And you can do that really easily. So in our system, we have automated email receipts, so you can have a really nicely worded email that goes out to them immediately. But you should also think about focus on sending pictures, giving updates about what what the money has gone towards. A really good rule is you always want to communicate at least twice between donation asks, so that you're thanking for them with a donation ask, but then you're also following up with a message maybe a month later saying, hey, you know, because of supporters like you, we were able to do X, Y, and Z, or here's pictures of how your gift truly made an impact. So you're not just coming back to people all the time saying, hey, can you give us another donation? People see the impact of the donation, and that, first of all, makes them feel good, but it also goes back to this storytelling that we've talked about, where people want to know what your organization does, and they want to know how the money is being used effectively. So by providing these pictures and providing these updates for the people who are donating to you, it's not only making them feel good, but it's making them a stronger supporter. So that when you do come to them for a different ask later on, they're much more prepared and much more willing to donate, rather than just because they know how successful your campaigns have been and how all of that money is being used effectively, which is going to help you long term. Nobody wants to just be asked for money. Everybody really wants to know how effective the organization is running, and also the impact that they're making by being a supporter. So always make sure you plan out how you're thanking your donors and supporters, and how you're making them aware of how important their donations are to your organization. And so with this too, as you're planning, and as we've discussed a lot, crowdfunding, they're really fun campaigns that are organic and bring in lots of different people, but planning is definitely a critical part. And so something that I really recommend as you're working through all of this, recruiting your ambassadors, planning on thanking your donors, is creating templates. So whether it's, whether it's videos that you can send out, or that you'll be sending to your ambassadors saying, hey, look, here's some pictures of some cute kids who are reading books. Please share these out with your friends and family so they can really see the impact of what our organization does. Or sending them email templates and thank you messages and social posts. Because you guys really have the information on how successful this, how successful your organization is, and kind of what, and all of the materials that tell the story from pictures and videos. So the more that you can put that into a template and put these into items that for your ambassadors to very quickly and easily share, the more effective they're going to be. Because if they're busy people, right? They're volunteering a lot, they have their own work, they have their own personal life. So the more you can create these assets for them in advance, the more successful they're going to be when they're promoting things for you on your behalf. And also, this is going to help you be more successful in turn, because they're going to be able to bring in more donations. But by preparing these things in advance as well, you're going to be able to promote your campaigns a lot easier. You're going to be it's going to be a lot easier for you to roll with any conflicts or obstacles that may come up throughout your campaign and adjust accordingly. So having templates, having assets, having any kind of materials prepared in advance that your fundraisers can use, but also your marketing team and your fundraising team can use, it's going to make it a lot easier for you to be effective long-term with your campaign. And so this carries well into the communication calendar that we've talked about. So you've recruited your ambassadors, or you have your problem, you have your solution, you have your assets, you have your ambassadors as well. Now you can really put this all together into a communications calendar. And this is such a critical component, because the more you can map it out in advance, the easier it's going to make your life. So the more, because basically if you know, like, all right, how are we getting people excited about what we do? So about 2 to 3 months beforehand, you can start to show people how effectively your organization has run over the years by sharing videos and pictures. And then start to make them more aware of what the problems are, what you have coming up that you can actually, you know, if we're sticking with the, maybe that you need to raise money for backpacks or school supplies, letting them know how many children are struggling with these issues and how it would have an impact in your community. And then you can really start by planning out all of these communications in advance, or planning out the timeline of how you really want to tell your story. You're going to be much more effective in telling your story, that you have a very clear and concise message. But you're also going to make it easier, again, if we talk about anything that might come along the way. Maybe you're not quite as far along in your goal as you want, or you're finding you're actually farther ahead, or maybe you've lost a couple ambassadors along the way. A variety of things can happen on a campaign. By having a communication calendar in advance, it allows you to adapt more quickly. So maybe you can push some of your communications up, add additional communications, and you can use those templates that we've talked about earlier to help you adapt really easily and effectively. And just to bring it back to what Sal said earlier, that I couldn't agree with more, what makes a crowdfunding campaign effective is really the planning that you do beforehand and all of the legwork that you do beforehand. If you just kind of throw a campaign up and one day and hope it does well, it has a tendency to not do as well, because you aren't prepared, you don't necessarily have all these logistics in place. But by planning all of this together, creating a communication calendar, you can really have a lot of the hard work done beforehand, so that you can just run this campaign and make it have it be very effective. So those are some tips on how to really start to plan out your campaign and make sure it gives you the basics for planning it. Now we're going to look at really how you can scale it from just being an idea with a plan, but really making it large scale and effective. So we've said this a bunch of times, but it just really is the most critical component of everything. Storytelling sells. Storytelling is everything in a crowdfunding campaign. If you don't have a story to tell, you are not going to have an effective campaign. And there are lots of ways to tell your story too, because you want to be interactive. You don't just want to direct people directly to a donation form. You want to have videos, you want to have photos, you want to show the impact that you're making. You know, have those smiling children. Everybody loves pictures of cute kids. Everybody wants videos of the impact that you're having in the community. So the more you can incorporate that, the more visual your story truly is, the more people are going to resonate with it. People are emotional, like we've talked about before. They want to know what's happening. So preparing these assets and putting these assets into your page is really a very important part. You'll see on the right side here, we have actually an example of a mobile cause page. And what's really nice is on our crowdfunding pages, we have a slideshow where you can put multiple videos and multiple pictures in there, so that you're really able to give the people who are coming to your pages a lot of opportunity to see what you're doing and what your impact is. And then in addition to those videos and pictures, you can also tell your story verbally, or sorry, not verbally, written. So talk about the actual statistics, put in that impact, show the needs that you have. That is such a critical component. It can't be emphasized enough that having the story, having the needs, showing what your cause really is all about is so critical to get people engaged so that they can see why their donation is important and really why they need to be donating immediately. So always bring it back to storytelling. And then another critical component that has been mentioned a number of times is set a timeline. You don't want to just have an ongoing crowdfunding campaign because there's no sense of urgency. There's no reason for me to donate. If you're just saying, hey, we do good work, we'd like for you to donate whenever you can, that's not appealing to my emotional need. It's not showing me the impact of what you've done. So you really want to create clear beginning and end dates because it's going to make it a lot easier, one, for you to plan your campaign. So you're not just supporting an ongoing campaign. It's going to make it easier for you to develop that communication calendar, recruit ambassadors, give people very definitive answers to what you're doing, and just make it easier to plan overall. But then most importantly, it's really creating a sense of urgency. So again, going back to your donors, they need a reason to donate. They're not going to donate to you just because you want them to. You really need to show them the impact, why it's important, and why it's important to donate now, why this donation can't wait until tomorrow, why this donation needs to come in immediately, why they can't come back to that Facebook page later and donate. Because we live in a very digital world where there's always something else happening. So by creating a sense of urgency, you're forcing them to take time out of their day to really make an impact. If you don't create a sense of urgency, they're just going to move very quickly on to the next thing because they'll think, oh, I can just come back and donate later. And then they may forget about it and they may never actually come back and donate later. So again, setting a timeline is really critical to make sure your donors or people are donating, but it's also going to make things a lot easier for you in terms of planning and developing resources and showing impact. So two very critical components that make setting a timeline very important. And so now we've talked a lot about finding problems, finding solutions, but also here are a lot of ways that you can use crowdfunding to make it fun and exciting. So we look at runs, walks, those are kind of the typical things that people think through, these active events where basically you're walking for a cure or something of that nature where you can really bring people together. It's almost like the event is the celebration and then people are fundraising beforehand. We also see a lot of people fundraising for camps, trips, things like that, where you have schools and any kind of person who may be going on a trip. This way they can create a page to fundraise with their friends and families. Friends and family. And then we also going from that too, also alumni programs. Everybody wants to have their alumni love to compete. I know my university is always, they have a competition every year on their giving day for every giving class, or the regions across the country will compete to raise the most money. So it's a fun way to make it interactive to get alumni involved. But in such an easy way where I can share a page over social media, I can make a donation, and I can share it with my friends and family who have probably heard me talk a lot about how much I enjoyed my time at that school. Now I have a very easy way to ask them to give, but also make it really fun for me too, of competing with other alumni to raise money. And from here too, you also have startup programs where you can work with professionals in your community, maybe corporations who might want to have, they have a social impact department and they want to show help in their community. So that can be a great way. We've had a number of organizations who will work with their corporate partners to create crowdfunding campaigns for a specific purpose, and those have been really successful. And it's really fun for everybody because it makes the corporation feel good, but also shows a lot of success. And building off of that, you can just really do any kind of DIY where maybe people are dedicating birthdays or anything else that they really want to give to you. They can just create a crowdfunding campaign really quickly and easily. And a critical component of all of this too is just showing your success. So as we've talked about throughout your campaigns, you want to make sure that you're always showcasing the success that you've had and how you're going, because people want to be on the winning team. Nobody wants to just step back and, nobody wants to be on the losing team. People want to know that they're a part of something that's successful. So it's helping show how successful your organization is by showing the impact, by showing the progress. People want to be a part of that, and they also honestly want to see their name as a part of it too. So we have items where you can have their names can be scrolling to show how their donation is a part of a overall total. But the more you can showcase your progress, it gets people excited, and ironically, people are more likely to donate the more money you raise, because they're like, oh, these guys are going to do great things. This is so exciting. I want to be a part of this great thing. So the more money you're raising, the more likely people will want to join you. And what's nice too is with Mobile Cause, you can add in checks, sponsorships, anything that you might be getting by other means, so that you can have a really true overall total, in addition to the credit card donations that you're getting from friends and families of your ambassadors. So very critical to show your progress and keep people up to date. Showing your progress should very much be considered a part of the storytelling process as well, so that people constantly know how successful you're being and where the campaign's really going. And then another step in just kind of going off from showing your progress, you can also, if you are able to, get a matching gift. Matching gifts are so helpful. So then the idea of a matching gift is you can say for every $1 raised, a corporate sponsor or somebody else, or maybe a major donor, will be matching everything dollar for dollar. This is so great because it helps emphasize, it helps people show that they have a much larger impact. So it helps make them feel a part of a community, but it's allowing them to double their impact, which it goes back to what we've talked about earlier. People are donating because they want to feel good. So if you can have a matching gift, they literally feel double the good, so that they can know that their gift is a part of something much larger than just their donation, and they're having a much larger impact. So if you can, always try to get a match, so then you can show extra success. And so here, now we've talked about a lot, from creating problems, finding a solution, and all the different ways that you will want to use storytelling. So now we really want to take it to a crowdfunding success that we've seen. So here, we're just highlighting one of our, this is actually from the University of Notre Dame. They had a crowdfunding campaign with their boxing club. So this was a student group on campus that wanted to raise money for, they were sponsoring a dormitory for a school in Africa that they were sponsoring and working with. So the boxing club has run this fundraiser in the past, but they never really had a landing page for it. So they used the Mobile Cause page. You can see they put videos on there. They also put pictures as well. And then they had a section that really went into the impact of discussing what exactly they were trying to do, who the people were that they were trying to help, what they had done in the past, and what they wanted to do in the future. So saying, hey, this is how we've helped this school in the past, and saying our goal is now to help them by building a dormitory so they can have that for the new year. So that's what they were, that's how they told their story. And then to help make it fun and help keep their ambassador, or the people who are fundraising excited, they created a sense of competition. They had the different students fundraise, but they also broke it up into classes. So their freshmen, sophomore, juniors, and seniors were competing against each other to raise money. So they had two levels where you could see the competition for the boxers of saying like, oh, well, the seniors are doing better, or the juniors are doing better. So it helped create a fun sense of competition within the club. But then you could also compare to see how all the boxers themselves were doing. So then they had their own totals. You could see who was in the lead, and everybody had their own landing page that they could share with friends and family, talking about how they had helped the how they had helped the organization in the past, and what was going towards in the future. And they could put up their own specific pictures and get people engaged that way. So it just goes back to what we've talked about earlier, how storytelling is so critical, having these visual elements to tell your story, but also having your ambassadors really share their impact and why they care about the campaign. So overall, this campaign was really successful for Notre Dame. They raised over $100,000, which was more than they had ever raised before. You can see they brought in over 1,000 new donors. And it's really interesting too, because they had over 200 fundraisers who were helping them. So all of these donors were really coming in from the friends and families of these boxers. This wasn't necessarily a university-specific campaign. It was really more their club that was trying to raise the money. So all of this money is really through the boxers asking and the club members asking their friends and family to donate, and overall really successful for them. But yeah, that's all about how to run a campaign and how a successful campaign. But I'll give it back to Alex now.
Indeed. Thanks, Katie. Cool. Thanks for sharing that valuable information. And as a quick reminder to our audience, if you haven't yet, please feel free to submit any questions you might have in the questions box of your control panel there. And before we spend some time with a bit of live Q&A with our presenters, I had one more poll I want to launch here. And the question is, how likely are you to run a crowdfunding campaign this year? So I'll go ahead and launch that poll up, and go ahead and make your selection in the polling interface and hit submit there. As we did previously, I'll share the results with everybody once we get a good chunk of you participating. Excellent. Leave it open for about 10 more seconds. All right, fantastic. Close that out and share the results. So it looks like the majority of those who voted in the poll will indeed be participating in a crowdfunding campaign sometime this year. About 30% of you said most likely in the next 3 months even. Wonderful. All right, so I'm going to hide those results, and we're going to switch gears for a few minutes just to answer questions that folks may have. So let's see, our first question here is for Sal. So Sal, in your experience, what is the #1 thing that crowdfunders need to do in order to be successful?
That's a good question. I mean, I think we've covered a ton of great strategy, the timeline. For those people that are running a campaign in the next 3 months, you really need to start to plan, like get out the calendar, get out when you're going to be launching this project, and sort of work backwards. Some of the stuff we talked about with the timeline, like doing things like creating advocates and reaching out to people, getting those assets together. So on the preparation side, I'd say that's a really big one, is just getting very serious about it and being willing to bring out that calendar and mark off what your launch is. Aside from that, I would say one of my biggest sticklers is that many nonprofits will kind of, I mean, I had the same pitfall myself, where I just saw people with huge social media audiences. Like they have lots of Twitter followers, lots of Facebook followers, and they're popular online. But being popular doesn't mean you can necessarily get people to donate to something or get people to take action in some way. I think the most powerful way in order to get an instant burst or an instant boost in funding with your project is to build that email list. Email is still king. I mean, email outperforms Facebook, Twitter, any other social media out there. So really the best thing you can do to set yourself up for success is to build that email list of potential donors, people interested in the cause. Maybe you share a video on Facebook or something, say, hey, by the way, we're going to be sending out some information about our upcoming event, or if you're more interested in learning more about how to help this cause, you can join this email list. We'll be sending out some other videos and other content and stuff like that. But by collecting those email addresses, you then have a direct access to people when you launch. That's what causes a boost in funding when you go live with your campaign.
Excellent. Thank you. Next question here is for Katie. Can you tell us more about your communications calendar? Is that something that MobileCause can help me with?
Sure, absolutely. So with MobileCause, we can definitely help you with that. We actually have a team of digital marketing consultants that I help with as well, that we can we basically create a strategy for you, so we can create your forms. We can also create the engagement strategy so that you have a really solid foundation to then launch your campaign. So it's definitely something we can help with. And what's nice with MobileCause too, we work with thousands of nonprofits. So we can really see what's working well, what isn't working, and as times are changing, we basically have a large pool of people to see what works well and what's not. So then we can pass those best practices on to you so that you can adjust your communications and strategy, and you can have updates from us real time about what we're seeing work well with the industry. So absolutely, we're happy we can definitely help with that.
Fantastic. Okay, our next question here is for Sal. Can you tell us a little more about assembling a street team? So perhaps what's worked for you in the past?
So I think the street team, it first comes with understanding you, the person who's running the project, and what you're good at and what you're not good at, where your competency lies. Some people out there are really great at project managing. You're great at scheduling things, breaking down tasks into smaller tasks and really organizing. I am not one of those people. Other people are very passionate advocates. They're great at sharing stories and talking and getting people interested in things. So you first have to think about, what are you good at? Where are your skills? Where do they lie? And then you try to find other people. Could even be just a handful of people in your network that are willing to help you with the project, that have either different skills or that bring different things to the table, or that tap into different resources. You yourself, you have access to resources. Maybe you have a board of directors. You have access to resources, but the people you also bring on in your team as well, they also have access to resources. They know people. I think Katie did a great job of talking about this. They are also tapped into different communities. So I would say first start with yourself. Examine your skills, your resources, what you're good at, the people that you can bring in. And then just exactly as we said before, getting them bought in, getting them invested in it. And that all comes with you, your story, and why you're so passionate about this, and sort of just, persuading people a little bit of why it's going to be a great thing, why this is going to be a killer fundraiser, why they're going to want to be a part of it, I think.
Wonderful. Thank you, Sal. And our last question today is for Katie. Do cause-related platforms like MobileCause actually work better for nonprofits than, say, general ones like GoFundMe?
Yes, and the reason that is because with a platform like MobileCause, you can really brand it for what you're doing. The idea here is with MobileCause, what we want to do is we don't want people to know that they're donating to MobileCause. We want people to feel really comfortable with and feel like they're on a website for you, even though we're creating a template for you to insert your branding and whatnot. So we have links that you can embed this in your web page. You can share it over social media. There's a lot of options for you so that it's fully branded and you're really helping create an experience where people feel like they're really just a part of your nonprofit. And what that helps for you is not only get the initial donation, but it's helping create that relationship. Because as much as we're talking about crowdfunding and kind of one-off campaigns, you really want to bring people in to form a long-term relationship with them so that they are becoming a sustaining donor, a recurring donor, and eventually a major donor to your organization. So having a platform that you can really brand for your experience, tell your story on, is really beneficial to kickstart that relationship.
Could I add one thing to that also? The one thing I wanted to add is that I think that when it comes to running a campaign, you're only as good as the people on your street team. You're only as good as your planning. You're also only as good as your tools, quite frankly. And a big part of building that organization is having those tools which make the process of raising money so much easier. It's so hard already to do a campaign. Nowadays, there are these different tools out there. There are proven strategies to raise money, and you just heard about the entire process for doing it. When it comes to the tools, this is also going to have a major significant impact on the amount that you're able to raise with a nonprofit. So whether it's MobileCause or you're checking out other solutions, I think it's just a no-brainer, quite frankly, to bring on those technology solutions to make the process, a lot easier.
Totally. Excellent. So I know that we had a number of really, really good and specific questions coming in from everybody. So if you haven't had your question answered today, please email that to marketing@mobilecause.com. You can review those questions and get back to you. Also, if what you heard today has been interesting to you and you'd like to learn more, you can connect to fundraising experts at Mobile Cause by answering the survey at the close of our presentation today, or you can call the number on the screen here, 888-661-8804, or visit our website, go.mobilecause.com/request demo. All right. Now, finally, be sure to keep an eye on your inbox. In just an hour or so, you'll receive the webinar recording and the slide presentation with the announcement of the 5 lucky winners of Sal's book. So that's going to conclude our event today. Thank you all for joining. And again, a huge thanks to our speakers. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Bye for now.